Hello, 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 and thank you for joining us today. I'm Kathie J, and in this edition of the Kathie J Show, we are going to get to know DJ KTone and his mother, Hanifah. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so KTone, you and I have known each other for over a decade.
Definitely.
We've worked together here in Denver and on radio, and whenever I was blessed enough to be in one of your clubs, I got. I was like, "You mean I get to be with KTone?" You are one of the like main DJs of Denver. That you've ran the clubs for so long.
Yeah.
You do so much. Tell everybody what else. I mean, where you came up through radio in Denver.
Well, for me it started. Well, first of all, shout out to you because you're OG out here.
For
sure. So I felt
you.
the same way when I was able to work with you in the club and do the remote or whatever. I was excited.
It was so much fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Totally. We never got to really do it, but if we ever did, I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody had to be sick in order for me to get one of the cool clubs
Yeah.
that he was at.
For sure.
I was at horrible clubs, Hanifah. I was like, like Hollywood Legends and Club Bash. He had like
you still made yourself a legend.
Thank you. You had like Chloe. Where were you at? You were at the coolest spots.
Yeah, I was everywhere. When I was DJing, I was at Blue Eyes. I was at so many spots.
I know, so many spots.
But it really started for me early 2000s. I had to really just build my brand, build my name up. Not even on radio. I wasn't doing radio at the time. I was more so just beating the streets and guerrilla marketing and using my name that I already had and, just growing up in Denver and doing my thing and building it that way. Then, more clubs and eventually got on radio. And I don't know if you remember, I don't know if you know, but when we was at, can I say
go ahead. Yeah, what?
When we was at 107.1.
Yeah,
I was
Flow.
when we was at Flow, I was on both sides. I was on the radio, plus I was doing
the jamming
sales. Yeah.
Okay, I had heard that but you know how they're
cracking.
so weird in radio? Like they got to make you like, we don't have any money. If you want to stay, you have to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
So I figured that's what, but you, I still use the mug you gave me. Like I was like, he's an entrepreneur, this guy. I got a Kathie J mug. I love this mug. So, but I didn't know, I knew that you were doing, sales, but you definitely, what I knew is you were a DJ that stood on your own to the point where you were scouted from the radio station. Like they came and said, "Get KTone." Like,
and so and I told you that to say, I really did, build the brand up to where I used to have a mixtape series called "I Don't Need Radio, Radio Needs Me."
Yeah,
and I stayed true to that. Like I came up like that. If I wasn't on radio, if they didn't come get me, all right, they gonna feel it. They gonna wish they had me. And, that's eventually how I got on Flow, which was, 2016, 2015.
Something like,
I can't remember what year it was.
Yeah,
it was
like, I don't know.
16.
I want to say it was like, because you were there before me.
Yeah, so it was between 15, I think we was done
15,
in 18
16,
or 19
right?
or something like that.
Yeah.
So I built it up to where, they had to come.
No, you did.
To me.
You brand man. You definitely know. You could teach a class on how to brand manage your life. Yeah. Yes. So then you also were doing the clubs.
Yeah. Doing the clubs.
Is that your
concerts.
first love, music, and just being in charge of the vibe?
Yeah. So music is my first love.
Yeah.
For sure. Like I've always been in the music though. Like I wasn't always a DJ, but I've always been in the music.
Like producing it or
whether I was
wanting
rapping,
to hear it,
whether
or
I was dancing, and this was young, so I was just being talent shows early.
Really, he was in talent shows. Bobby Brown. Who was he doing?
Even younger than that. Before we came here to Denver, I remember him in the neighborhood. He was like 4 and 5, and he had a boom box. And everybody in the neighborhood knew he was kind of his little cassette tapes, and he would be going down the street.
I love that.
With his music. And it's so funny. A lot of my friends would say, he's going to be something in music because he always had the music on.
Okay.
Always had this little boombox on him.
Yeah. So like it was just known.
Yeah.
You were okay. All right.
Plus, she had a record player, and I used to have. She had a real turntable. And I used to have the Sesame Street record.
Rubber ducky, you're the one.
I don't know if I was necessarily scratching, but I was definitely.
Right, but you already were getting used to the feel of it and everything.
Then when I got older, like middle school, high school, I used to make mixtapes for me and my homies. But you could stop. You had to record, play at the same time on the cassette. So I used to do that.
Wow. So you did, and you had to like learn the beats and what song went with what rhythm and all of that. How where were you from, and when did you come to Denver?
Okay, originally we're from New Jersey.
Okay.
That's where I grew up.
Okay.
And
you still have family back there right now?
No, it was just my immediate family. It's so funny. We were the only nucleus ones. There's nobody in New Jersey. Right, my sister now lives in Delaware, and I have a brother in Georgia.
Okay.
But everybody else from our family is out here.
Okay. Who came first out to Denver, and why choose Denver from New Jersey?
Okay, we were the only ones in New Jersey.
Okay, so you're like
just my immediate, my mom, dad, my sibling, my two brothers, and my sister. So that's where I grew up, in a place, Somerdale, New Jersey, which is about 20 minutes outside Camden, New Jersey.
You don't have an accent.
I've never had an accent.
Really?
Never.
Do any of your siblings have the accent? Does anyone have the accent?
Yeah, my sister does.
Sometimes it's hard to get rid of a Jersey accent.
It does. I've never had one. And everybody used to be like, "You're from Jersey? You don't sound like it." I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, I wasn't meant to be.
I just wasn't meant to have one. But the thing that made me come out here, because when we lived in Camden, when Kamau was little, and Kamau has always been a very self-sufficient child. He was always 3 years old. I used to get these calls, "Mom, come out here." And he's climbing up the railing to do so. He's always been an adventurous spirit and always his own person.
I love that.
And another time I remember I was looking outside and I just hear the kids out there, Mom, it says, Mom, come here. And I look out, Kathie, and as I come to the door, they used to, back in Jersey in the street, they would do the bike ramps. So the kids would ride the bikes real fast down the street and do the ramps. This little one on a red bicycle, 4 years old, 4.5, zooming down, goes up and all I see is this bike go up in the air. And meanwhile, down the street, I see a car coming. And I'm like this. But he came down and he swerved in between cars. And then he says, "Wasn't that great?" And I was like, I got to get him out of here.
You know, actually, you should have been like, "Come out." No, you didn't. That was...
No, I was like, I can't. I got to get him out. I got to get him a place where there's some spaces.
Right.
But the thing that really was...
You were going to get hurt because you're a little adventurer daredevil.
Yeah. Was when he came in the house one day and he was like, "Mom, look what I found." And it was an empty crack vial.
Oh, yeah, that's...
And but he was so nonchalant about it.
Yeah.
That was the
You're like,
thing.
no, this isn't going to be my child's normal.
And fortunately, I have relatives, my mom's sisters and stuff lived in Denver. But I thought they were the only ones that was out here. So I remember I called my aunt up. I said, "I'm coming."
Yeah.
I have been talking about it for years.
We're doing it.
Nobody in Jersey believed me because I had talked about it for so many years. They're like, "You're not going nowhere." Until they said, I quit my job. I had been on my job 10 years. Within 2 to 3 weeks, quit my job, packed everything up. Because I said if I didn't do it quick, I wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
And we came out here.
So this is what I love about both of you. And the more I get to know you, Hanifah, like now I know where he gets it. Both of you fight stereotypes. Like I just feel like you're the KTone Cares Foundation is all about helping and, you know, and some of what you're doing, it's fighting these stupid stereotypes that you feel have been placed on you, whether it's a mom that can't leave Jersey, you know, you're like, no, this is not my normal. Like, so is it something that y'all feel on the inside that drives you to go to, where's your compass at? Like, what was the compass? I mean, he has the same one of, you know, like they're going to come to me, radio will come to me. I'll figure, you know, like tell me where your compass is.
I think for me, it always was, I always never felt, I didn't want to live and die in the same place I grew up. So I always knew Jersey wasn't going to be it. I was going to go somewhere.
But Denver?
I didn't think Denver was going to be it. I had a 5-year plan for Denver. And I was going to come out here, let him go through elementary school. And get the fundamentals.
Get him a cowboy hat.
Because it probably...
the stereotypes,
but my ultimate, I wanted to go to Raleigh-Durham.
Oh, yeah.
Because I had a brother that lived there, and I said, I want to go there, because it just seemed like the pinnacle. And I said, yes, I'm going to go there, but... You see where I'm at.
Yeah, right. You liked it. You got it.
Life,
yes.
Life has a way of keeping you where you're at, and life has a way of saying, God was like, no, you're going to get it. You're going to be here.
Do you have siblings? Do you have... Yeah.
Well, I have not from her.
Oh, okay.
From my,
Okay, so he's
your only. He's my
only.
biological only child.
Okay, all right.
But he does have 6 half-brothers.
Okay, all right.
His dad.
From the dad. Okay, so all right, so here's my. When you moved out here, then it was just the two of you.
Basically, yeah.
Okay, so that makes it easier
Me
too.
and my buddy.
Right. That's what I say. You and your buddy. When I feel that with the two of you. When I met, because I've known him For over a decade. And I love him. Every time I meet him, like, I just love him, you know, like, I was hoping to be your daughter-in-law. I love him so much. Like,
He's
he
not
knows,
married,
I mean, I'm
Kathie.
not the only girl that has a crush on him. Oh my goodness. But it's his heart. It's who he is. And when I met you immediately, I felt your heart. Like, I was just like, and then when I found out you were his mom, I was like, well, that just right there makes sense. Like, so I know where he understands his window, his ceiling. There is no ceiling for him. Where did you, forgive me, being an African-American woman, growing up in the 60s and 70s, where did you realize that you also had no ceiling? Where did that come from?
Well, I don't know if I didn't realize I didn't have a ceiling, but I always had dreams that I knew where I was at was not where I was going to be at the rest of my life.
Again, you say that statement. I love that, though. You're like, even in how you feel, you go with that guy.
Well, because I always, growing up in, like I said, it was a very suburban environment, but my family was part of the white flight in the 60s when we lived in South Philly, and this is when a lot of African Americans were starting then the suburbs were opening up.
Okay.
And we moved over to a place in Somerville. So we had a little enclave of about a 3-block radius, primarily black families. We had our community.
Suburbia.
Yes.
That's cool.
In suburbia, but I went to a predominantly white high school. It was surrounded by a predominantly white environment. However, in our community, it was the old sense of community, friends and playing outside. And it was the best time in hindsight now that I think about it. The best time to grow up as a child, as a kid.
Yeah.
Because, and just the activities. But I always knew that I was always a little quirky because I was kind of a nerdy kid. I loved to read. I used to be told at the time, why do you talk like you do? The standard quintessential, you talk like a white girl. And I used to say, why? Because I read?
I mean,
and that still is a stereotype that still is addressed for a lot of us out there because we know how to articulate. And you kind of get a little insulted, but I think that's because people didn't understand and they used to associate smartness with a certain race, and that's not even what it is at all.
Yeah.
So I always knew I was a little different, and the interests I had were a little different. But I always just said, well, I'm going to be, I can't change it.
Yeah.
And then anytime I tried to be like a square peg in a round hole, it never fit. So when growing up in Somerdale, and then I got involved with an organization. Well, let me just say it a little bit. I had a tragedy in my life when I was 19. My mother died suddenly when I was 19. And I think that was a trajectory that just shifted my life, what I was going to do. Because before that, I was going to go off to college and do this stuff. But when you're the oldest daughter in a family and your mother passes, then there's a lot of responsibility that's put on you. And took that on. But I also knew that there was something.
Wasn't the end.
Something wasn't right. And I met some people. I used to hang out, my best friend went to college, so I used to hang out at the colleges. And I met this group of people who were really into Pan-Africanism and learning about your pride and blackness. And, when you grew up in that time frame, that was a source of pride. So I got involved with this organization where I changed my name legally. That was funny, too, because when I came in and told my father what my new name was, I remember he just kind of looked at me and just non-pulsed. He never called me my name for 2 years. He used to call me the African.
Oh, wait, stop. Okay. Did you know that? Okay.
Yeah.
So Hanifah is not your.
That's not my
your
born
birth
name.
That's
not my born name.
And so when you came and told your father,
and it came out because we had a Kwanzaa celebration, and this was like a rebirth. And
totally.
my friend said, I want to give you a name that reflects who you are, and your reflection of your being prideful and understanding your heritage. So my name was Hanifah Ayutoro Chukwu, and it all meant, he researched it and it all meant something related to who I am. And I remember when I came into my dad, he was sitting in the chair reading the newspaper, and I came up to him and I said, I want to make an announcement. From this day forward, I will be known as Hanifah Ayutoro Chukwu. I will take it as disrespect if you not call me Hanifah, and I would appreciate if that's what you call me from now on. I will not be referred to by my former name. I remember he just kind of looked at me and just kind of shook his head and put the paper down. 2 years, he never called me. Nothing. When people would call, he'd go, who? Oh, you want the African?
Oh,
okay.
Goodness. Oh, goodness. Okay, so do you remember what the moment was on why he finally used your name?
I just think
he just was like, she's sticking to it.
I think something he just said it, and I was like,
It happened.
Yeah,
And like, he said he loved me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of so. Then it was very important for him to have an African name.
Oh, definitely.
So then, why did you choose Kamau?
Because I was with this organization. We used to go to DC a lot and do, as we called, organizational activities. And I remember I was walking down the street one day and I saw this brother, this black guy. He was so majestic in just how he looked, and I asked him, I said, "What is your name?" He said, "My name is Kamau Hassan." I said, "If I ever have a son, that's going to be his name."
Yeah.
So when I got pregnant, I had like a list of 20 girl names and only one boy name.
Yeah.
That was it.
It was meant to be.
And that
meant
was
to
it.
be.
That was his name.
Meant to be. Okay, so growing up
and
here.
it fits.
So
It fits.
did you stay the group that you were a part of?
It was part of, then it disbanded, like around till about, let's see, when you were born, 81. Till about, I was in there from about 75 to about 80, 81.
So were they a version of the Black Panthers?
It was more of a it was more of a international, like a Pan-Africanist.
Okay.
It had the same kind of concepts of the Panthers, but it was about organizing the black
Not
community.
as intimidating to white people. Is that what
No,
you
because it was more. It was more of an educational
Okay.
of people studying our history
All right.
and knowing who you are to reflect your traditions. It was just more of a cultural birth, you know.
Speaking of cultural birth, he was so much a part of hip hop, especially coming up in Denver and what we heard and stuff. And I was on KS 107.5 and hip hop and the radio, and there was such a cultural birth with hip hop, bringing knowledge of what was happening in the streets to people. Would be like, "What did Ice Cube just say is going on at his high school?" Like, it was so. What do you? I mean, tell me when you look back at generations and stuff. You know, I mean, like, tell me how you feel, like, I don't know, just
The current state of hip-hop?
Yes.
You know, it's really because I grew up in the land of Gil Scott-Heron and the Last Poets and conscious. I don't want to call it hip, but conscious music.
Yeah.
Even when you had back in the early days of hip hop, with people were still more conscious in what they were speaking about. It wasn't as violent. It wasn't about the sexualization of stuff. It was really about thinking about pride and who you are, where you come from. And that's what my true first impressions of hip hop. I remember when Kamau was little, and this is when NWA and all this came in.
Yeah.
And I used to be kind of like naive, because I used to get him, he used to get the little taste and used to let him listen to him, until one night he was sleeping. I happened to go by his room and I heard the song F the Police.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I remember stepping back and said, whoa. And he was, yeah.
It was definitely probably a year or two before it became the news. Because those mixtapes, remember, like
That's what they were.
like a rush would come from anyone that knew someone in California. Like the mixtape would make it our way, and then like NWA toured here, like in the beginning.
It was the album. I had her buy me NWA and Two Live Crew.
Yes,
But she
And I didn't know.
She
And
didn't know.
of course he had to have two.
I didn't know
Live Crew.
until I listened to it. And this is when I told him, I said, "You're done." This is when, like, Dolores Tucker came in with the, the censorship of music, and he was like, "Mom, but I don't listen to the lyrics. I like the beat." I said, "I don't like the subliminal messaging. You're asleep. You're too young. You're like 9 years old, 10 years old. When you're like 13, you can go. I think you'll
you
have the
understand the
maturity
energy.
then."
Yeah, yes.
And I don't think right now, I know you like the beats, but I don't like what the language is. I don't like the messaging it is. So it was a point of, he didn't understand it, but I said, "But I'm your mother. That's what I'm supposed to do."
But then when you started hearing how hip hop was saying some truths and some things, I mean, it must have been.
And it was, but I think I got caught up into, because he was like 9
Oh
or
no!
10.
Yeah, the 9-year-old, I get that. You know, but yeah. But then once you've realized, wow, music, they're actually educating America as to what's going on, and then I feel like it ruled forever, and then I feel like now there's a deafness again. Do you feel like there's a deafness in the culture?
I don't necessarily think it's a deafness or it's a distraction.
Oh yeah, the same. One
I
and
think
the
it's
same.
a distraction. I think it's something where it's being taken away from thinking. They don't want us to think and feel. They just want you to react. And that's what's happening, especially with a lot of the sexualization of stuff, of music, which is heartbreaking, because you watch these young kids, I mean little kids, who are doing little dances and stuff and don't even know what they're doing.
Oh, if I had $1 for every time my 9-year-old started twerking, I'm like, stop, stop.
And for
you
them, but in all honesty, for them, they don't even realize the connection.
Yeah.
All they know is this is what the imaging that they're seeing.
This is the imaging, right?
And then they think it's cute because everybody's like, and plus you have, the rise of with the social media and everybody wants to be like,
the social media is very damaging. And so I do feel that's where I'm going next is, I do feel like as all of that is around and clogging our heads and we have to hold on to our inner compasses and stuff, you two have created the DJ KTone Cares Foundation, and it's really about mental health, about everything going on and how you carry your inner compass. Yeah. So let's talk about the DJ KTone Cares Foundation.
I know it's a mouthful.
But it's all perfect. It's all perfect. And let's talk about your foundation.
Well, the foundation, definitely. I mean, we have we do a lot of things in the community, but I think we definitely focus on mental health, self-care, youth violence prevention, but it all stemmed from, community. And another acronym for KTone Cares is KCF, community comes first, So I think for me, it kind of really started, like I've always been into giving back, you know what I mean? I've always been into giving back to my community and to the city that raised me. But KCF formed in 2021. Although we were giving back.
You were doing it way before.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just something I was doing.
Did it form because you yourself needed a mental check or because you kept seeing it with everyone that you were helping? Where did it come into be?
No, it formed from me, being in a dark space, going through things I was going through personally. I think it derived from that. And then, it was birthed in 2021 with the help of, my mother and, my people, Destiny and Mari, and shout out to my brother.
You have
John
a great crew. You have a great crew for sure. Were you always the mom that said, talk about your feelings? Talk about your feelings.
I've always talked about my feelings. I think
he's like too much.
I'm very much a hugger. I'm very much an emotional kind of person. And it used to, and he's more, but he reminds me of my dad. And that generation of being stoic, even though I know he's very emotional. And I think, like I said, I really saw a breakthrough about 5 or 6 years ago where whatever things he was going through, and he just had it was like a breakdown to have a breakthrough, which was, now I see he's much more in touch with who he is and his feelings, very much expressive, not afraid to show that. Whereas, as we know, it's seen from men. You shouldn't show that. You shouldn't do that. And they used to just always get me, because that was one point a while ago that we used to get into these conversations. I'm like, when they say, don't cry like a girl, and I think, what is crying like a girl? Because aren't tears an emotional, just a human reaction?
Yes.
And I think there still is that element.
It's no different from talking like a white girl to yes. It's everyone wants to throw their stereotype on everyone, but there is a huge stereotype on being the tough dude and needing help, and then being a black man and going there. And you and I have talked about this before. Right. I mean, the stereotype for black men, I think, is even tougher.
It is.
Why?
It is. I think for us, it's just our environment we grew up in.
It's hard living.
It's hard living. It's already hard. When I'll tell my sons right now, we got 2 strikes against us when we wake up and walk out the door off top.
And they are?
Just being a male, being black,
being
our skin tone.
And gender.
That's what I said, being a male.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Our skin tone. And for some of us, like, might be intimidating, you know what I mean, for whatever reason. So it's already hard. So we got to walk out with tough skin and act hard. And
should I be offended by what that person's doing? Well, I can't get offended because now I'm that angry person. And,
exactly.
you really have to, I don't think a lot of white people understand the armor that you do have to put on. And you don't know if the white person's going to be scared of you, if the white person's going to be, overreacting to want to be your friend. You don't know who you're getting. And I think same here, I think white people are like, are they friendly? I mean, so I understand. Do you feel like you've always had to put the armor on, even when you were in like the suburban world that you lived in back in the day?
You know what, Kathie? I know what you're saying, and I think there's a historical connection to why there's the imagery, like the stereotypes and the ignorance and stuff, why stuff is perpetuated today. But I've always of the belief of communication. I think communication is a lost art form today.
Yes.
We don't take the time to talk to each other. And Kamal will tell you, and a lot of people say, I will talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I asked you to come today.
I will, because I find people interesting. Even people who are really, I'm like, it's a little different, but I always want to find out what makes you tick. Why?
Yeah.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
Because even in that conversation, I'm not saying we're going to be best friends or anything, but at least we'll gain some knowledge.
Yes.
And maybe I'll trigger something, make you change your way of thought, and vice versa. Or if nothing else, we've had a conversation. Keep it moving. I'm a firm believer in that. I don't think people talk enough to each other.
She's always been like that, and I'm kind of.
And
so
I'm similar, but I'm kind of opposite too. Like, but I'm kind of different. Like I can go in the room. I don't have to say anything.
I know it's very uncomfortable. I don't know what I'm always like, let's talk. He's not talking. So when you talk with your sons, how many children do you have?
I have 5.
Okay, and how many are boys? What do we got? All 5 are boys?
No, 3 boys.
3 boys.
Yeah.
And so when you talk to them about, being a strong man and a strong black man and stuff, do you find that you can talk ad nauseum, or do you still have a problem getting it out?
No, I talk. I talk to them, and I also, the difference is too. I tell them, it is okay to be, show emotion, or it is okay to, do things maybe differently that I did and grew up doing or knowing, You
know what I found, and this is I think what most parents, I find he's much more open and stuff. Like his youngest son, like the older 2, because it does what.
Yeah.
Like you don't know.
time.
Like the oldest one, you forged with it, and they've got a great relationship now, but it was through some issues.
He's in college, right? I can't believe you have a son in college.
We got 2 in college.
That's crazy.
2 of them are in college.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But I've seen the evolution of even the communication that she said. It's almost like how I feel like as a grandparent. Like my first grandson, who I adored, I still adore all of them. But now as a grandmother, now I know which battles, which ones, how to handle it.
Yes.
And this is what comes with
Every
experience
single,
and time
yes,
and different,
absolutely.
and even understanding the different personalities. Because even though they're all my grandchildren, I all love them. They all have separate personalities, and they all have little indicators that I have to be aware of when I'm communicating with them and dealing with them.
But you're right, because there is a difference between a woman that can communicate and a man who has to fight toxic masculinity. So talk to me about, because that's one of your big things is getting rid of toxic masculinity. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, but we grew up, like she said,
Not
cry.
a thing.
You can't cry. You can't do that. Well, she never really taught me that, but the environment I was in taught me that. You know what I mean? So even, again, going back to the oldest too, I was on that. Like, man, stop all, shut up. We punch him in the chest. And, you know what I'm saying? Like, man, I ain't doing all that. But with my youngest son, it's a little different. And I explained to them too, like, we just had the conversation like 2 weeks ago. We was talking about how his brothers were raised and the parent I was then, it's kind of different.
Yeah.
Now, like the times are different. I'm a little more, I might not be as.
And I think that's when the generational rollover can click.
Right.
Either your generation's going to be stuck suffering again with toxic masculinity, or he learned it, so now he can prevent your grandkids from having to deal with it. It's like every generation's supposed to get a little bit better and get rid of some things that hold them back.
For sure.
Yes.
And like you said, get rid of some things. I know I'm not the perfect.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
You don't gotta be.
But I'm definitely, we did break some barriers, some stereotypes, and
No, that's awesome.
For their children, I feel like, you know, they're going to be even better than we were.
And that's the whole,
For sure.
And that's going to make you so proud to know that this is your seed. This is your future, that they are learning the rights, you know, the little pieces of the puzzle that make you a complete person. He's knocking them down to help, you know, your grandkids.
Oh, I love it. I really love I was a good mom. Because people say, "Oh, you did so great," and I take that, but I have to remember too. Kamal has always been a self-sufficient child.
Yeah, you've been saying that.
Because I always say, I remember when he was younger, I said I didn't want a kid because you know some kids are clingy, they can't go anywhere. Not this one.
Yeah.
But I also was blessed with a village. I also was blessed with
very
people
important.
that helped me with him, that poured into him. A little funny story is when I remember when I first moved to Denver, I had never bought him clothes. Because I was like, what size do you wear? Because he had older god brothers, and they had good stuff. I never shopped for him because everything was there. Yep. And then when I put him into sports, he had great coaches who poured into him, teachers who poured into him. So I was very much an advocate for making sure I had a strong village to help me. Because as a single mother, I knew I couldn't do it. There were some things I didn't get raising a son. I wasn't going to understand. He was in Denver Kids. He had a big brother. So I think all those are elements that you have to address when you're raising a child. You got to look at, you can't do it by yourself. So you have to reach out to people who can help you raise these children.
Yeah, no, and I love that that's what the KTone Cares Foundation is. So we have to wrap up. I've loved hanging out with you guys. Thank you so much. So before I let you go, I do want to talk about the KTone Cares Foundation because you have scholarships that you're hunting for right now.
Definitely.
Talk about the scholarships. Tell everybody what you want about the foundation.
Okay, well, the book award, the DJ KTone Book Award has been going on since about 2017. And over the past those years, there's been about 40 students that we've been able to give out about, I would say, upwards of maybe $25,000 cumulatively. Well, right now, the application is open to May 15th. If you go to the website, www.KToneCaresFoundation.org, the application's on site. If you go to our Facebook page, you want to get some information, leave your name, somebody will follow up with you. But what it is, we're looking for graduating high school students who are going to be going to college, vocational school or a trade school, and fill out the application. And we want to help you get secured, because you can use the money for books, for incidentals, and a lot of times we forget about those little incidentals kids need when they go away to college.
Yes, right. Oh, no.
And this is a way for us to offset some of those expenses.
Yeah.
So we encourage people, all you have to do is present like a small one-page essay on why. Get 2 letters of reference.
Why you deserve it.
Right, submit it in. It's not rocket science.
No.
Right.
But you would be surprised, Kathie.
Oh, yeah.
How difficult people do not take advantage.
Come on, the money is out there.
The money's
at the
out
KTone
there.
Cares Foundation.
And if anybody wants to donate, we're also taking donations to help us to fuel this, because the money goes towards getting scholarships.
No, I know, and I've seen your
there.
stories. I love them. The kids that come back and say thank you for this. Hanifah, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
We've been speaking today with Hanifah and KTone, Kamal, Tone.
All that.
But I am going to let you have the last word. What would you like people to know about you and your foundation and just what you're learning about mental health?
Oh man, I'm constantly learning. I just want you to know, community comes first. We are in community. We talk to community daily. We know the needs. We stay up to date. And
we're open to collaborate.
Yeah, we're open to collaborate.
Yeah.
But I'm a product of the community. So that's why I'm here. That's why we're here, and that's why we do what we do. And I'm grateful to be in the position that we're in. To do the things that we can do for the community.
Get better with every generation.
Because if you don't, then what is it about?
What is it about if you don't give back? That's exactly right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
Hanifah, Kamal, thank you so much for being here. Thank you. DJ KTone and Hanifah, DJKToneCaresFoundation.org. Thank you so much.
Definitely.
Thanks, Kathie.
Kathie J.